Welcome to the preview of round 11 on the Blue Abroad YouTube channel as our Blues are set to take on the GWS Giants at a really interesting time on Saturday afternoon. It's 12:35. It's going to be one of two games held at Marvel Stadium on Saturday. And away we go. We are back after a disappointing away trip to the Sydney Swans last week. We really are in the grind of the season. Well, at least that's how it feels for me anyway. That initial part of the season where you don't have enough sample size to understand what the trends are has come and it's gone. We're now, in that third month of football. We're one game away from a bye. And I guess reflecting on the season, we can do that properly after this week once we get into the bye and we can do a mid-season review. But definitely feel like this patch has become definitely a back and forth grind, and it's really difficult to get a tell as to whether or not we're trending in a better direction or in a worse direction than what we are. It depends which day you talk to me. Depends after which game. Obviously, the away games haven't been great to the Blues. The home games have been better than what they were at the start of the season. We're really just in that middle patch of every team in the ladder. And it's really hard to get a tell. Ultimately, what it looks like right now, well, this is the truth. If the Blues are going to do anything this year, they're going to need to go on some sort of a streak, on some sort of a run, find some form, find some consistency. And that's the reality. Otherwise, we're just finding ourselves in that, 9th to 13th, week to week, after starting the season very poor. And this week, we come up against a side where the narrative, I think, would lend itself to the Blues. What I mean by that is, we've had games this year, specifically Adelaide and Adelaide, Sydney and Sydney, Collingwood as well, where the rhetoric and the confidence levels are not as high as what they are against other sides because of the history. We rarely beat Adelaide in Adelaide, if ever. We rarely beat the Swans at the SCG, and there was a bit of a narrative around that, and that came true again, unfortunately. But this time it's flipped. The Giants at Marvel Stadium, which is somewhere where we've done relatively well against them. We actually played a brilliant game last year against the Giants at Marvel, and it was a high-quality game. The Giants seemed like they were in control of the proceeding, and the Blues just pulled away in the second half, and I remember it was a third quarter burst, and then we just wrapped it up and we won fairly convincingly. There were a few late goals from the Giants, but I even circle back to the other time we played at Marvel. I believe that was in 2023, maybe even 2022. So bit more confidence on the narrative front, but after seeing the guys in their inconsistent performance last week, it's hard to tell. We find ourselves in yet another, what do you call it? We find ourselves in yet another response situation. Response FC has been coined this season, and it's kind of true, and that's the reality of this team so far in this experience, not just this year. It's been a while. I used the analogy early in the week around, they remind me of even myself at uni when assignments came around. You've got 3 months to prepare. The end of the season's in 3 months' time at the start of the year or more. And for some reason, you just flirt with danger and you flirt with the time that you have, and all the important moments leading up to, you flirt with them and you try and be cute, and you get found out, and then the crunch time comes and you just have to lock in. I don't think we're there just yet. I actually do think there's minimal more room for error. But, going into the bye 5 and 6 is a much better proposition, considering where we were at the start of the season after the first month. So that's what's at stake. There are injury narratives around this game. The Giants are a little banged up. The Blues are a bit banged up as well. I always find, in my experience with the team, as soon as that injury list starts creeping into the double digits, that's when it really starts falling down. To be fair, even when it's not in the double digits, we sometimes see inconsistent performances. But I do remember last year, once it hit 10, 11, 12 plus on the injury list, and when, 6 to 7 of those players would be playing in the first choice team if they were fit, that's when we struggle. And so, we'll look at the Carlton injury list right now, and you can make your own assessment of who would be playing if they were fit. But as it stands right now, we have quite a few players that'll be a test. Jack Silvani, thankfully, has returned positive scans from what looked to be a groin injury. He is actually a chance to play this week. Now, the question will obviously be, do you risk him? Given you've got a bye next week, you could give him, essentially 2 weeks rest and then charge into the second half of the season, balanced with he's just so important to the team now, especially in that back line. And there really is a difference when he leaves that back line, isn't there? It's quite fascinating. So he's one. I err on the side of caution with Silvani personally. Blake Acres, he's a test to play, could be available, had a shoulder issue. I would think he'll play. I think he'll play sore for the rest of the season. I think he's done that for quite a while with these shoulders anyway. Fogarty's one I would like to see coming back into this team. I think between Motlop, Evans, and Will White, those are obviously not the first choice smalls. Maybe Jesse Motlop's at the start of the season at the top of that list. He's not in great form. I don't think Will White is a first choice small in this team when we have availability. So I would think Fogarty would come in. De Koning's an interesting one, has the larynx issue. We saw reports that he was at training early this week. Granted, it was their Monday session, which is always very light, so I wouldn't read too much into that. I don't know what this is. I don't know if this is a pain threshold situation. I do remember Ed Kerno having a larynx issue a few years back, and he was out for quite some time. So I'm really not sure on the severity of it, but I hope he does come back because I think Tom really provides a spark in this team and an energy source that is different when he's not in there. Orazio Fantasia is an interesting one because all of a sudden, after 3 weeks of full training, it says he's been progressing really well and he's going to be aiming to be available to play this weekend. So I guess the question is, do you play him? Does he need time in the VFL before you play him? Given a guy with injury history like his, I do err on the side of caution. However, the smalls are struggling to impact. So just depends on how he's feeling. Zach Williams is an interesting one. They've given him an extra fortnight to recover, which I do want to see him play. I do like that they are erring on the side of caution and they're reporting that early. So I would say we're going to have 2 to 3 changes this week. We're not going to see Cottrell until after the bye. Same with Lockie Cowan. So on the surface, this injury list looks a little scary because there's quite a few names on here. But I think over the next few weeks, quite a few of them will come off. And we just hopefully go into this game not having to use another sub in the first quarter and, not coming out of the game with an injury. That'll really help. The Giants, on the other hand, they've got a few injury concerns of their own. You look at their injury list, it's nowhere near as big as ours, but some of the quality of players in there, especially in their engine room. You got Josh Kelly, Cornelio, Callahan, Stringer in their forward line, and Brent Daniels, who is a menace. And I have memories of Brent Daniels that just haunt me forever. So they've got injuries. We've got injuries. I don't think the injury excuse can be used for either side because they both teams have injury excuses, so to speak, and every team has them. This is really just about Carlton, and in a really weird way. I don't know why. I don't know where I get the confidence from, but just as much as it would have been a typical Carlton thing to lose to the Swans last week, it would be just as typical for Carlton to win this game. Does that resonate with anyone out there? I don't, there's no basis for my confidence other than it would just make sense. And it's the response situation. And yeah, supporting the team is a grind. It's a battle, like I said at the start of the video. So do I think we have the tools to bring this game onto our terms? I do. And I think given the Giants are missing a couple of those dynamic players who bring that speed to the game, particularly Callahan and Daniels, we're going to see the effects of that. They still have that in the back half. Lockie Ash has had an incredible season, and he's one that really can get off the leash, as well as someone like a Lockie Whitfield with his ball use and his drive. So we're going to need to be accountable there. But, in the middle of the ground, I just go into this game thinking, our midfield let us down last week, I thought. Their stats looked good, but I think, it was one of those situations. And oftentimes it can be this. Sometimes the stats can look good, but the eye test and the feel for the game, you just see it's off. And in the critical moments, I thought our midfielders struggled to get on top. Same with our key forwards. Harry and Charlie didn't play poorly last week, but in the critical moments when we really needed them to execute the play, they weren't able to do so for whatever reason. So I draw a bit of confidence there. Some great matchups and some great battles are going to happen. You're going to have Sam Taylor likely to play on Charlie Curnow, which will be a great battle. Likely to have Jacob Wiedering and Jesse Hogan going at it. Although we have had some success in the past with Lewis Young on Jesse Hogan. So that's an interesting one to look out for. And yeah, I'm excited for the bye. Bit of a circuit breaker and a breath before charging into the second half of the season. But it really needs to come with the win this week. 5 and 6 is manageable, I believe, going into the second half of the season. Getting some players back. You get into the thick of it and, we go from there. We're not going to be hindered by weather conditions. It will be cold and wet. It is cold and wet in Melbourne. And it's going to be cold and likely wet in Melbourne. We won't have that issue. We're under the roof. Perfect conditions for football. Synthetic conditions, as I like to call them. And let's just hope. That's where it is for me right now. I don't have confidence about the team on a whole. I'm hopeful I'm actually a bit more confident than hopeful this week. Last week I was hopeful, not confident. This week I'm like 55% confident, 45% hopeful. So it's kind of flipped on its head. But yeah, we'll see what happens. This is the Sir Doug Nicholls round, so this is the second week of it. So we're still in that round. And, that's a very special round in the way that it's celebrated. We also have the Cheer Squad raffle this week. They are giving away a prize, a Indigenous Guernsey, the 2025 Indigenous Guernsey. So if you are interested in winning that Guernsey, the link to it will be in the description below this video. Make sure you get around that and get around the Cheer Squad, and we get an opportunity to go to the footy once again. Just got to bring it back down to gratitude. So many emotions, back and forth about what's happening. But one thing I know for sure that I've learned over the journey is you just got to keep going, because the footy keeps going. And the challenge is to not get stuck in the mud after a poor performance, because you can do things and say things and be things and, that have long-lasting effects. But then the reality is the game just plays on the next week, and you're only 1 week away from potentially finding better form or worse form. So we'll see what happens. What are your thoughts about this game? How are you feeling about the game? What are your thoughts around selection and the players that are, a test to come in? How many changes would you make and what would they be? Let me know in the comments below. Let's have a chat about it and we'll go from there. Come on, Blues.